Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Irie from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be the Combat Series episode number 32 for you guys today. Of course, this episode will be coming out on all four of our platforms, our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So let's go ahead and dive into the first segment of the Combat Series this week. I'll be sharing my UFC 297 main event prediction between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis. So we will be saying in the main event of UFC 297, the first UFC pay-per-view of the calendar year 2024, we will be seeing a middleweight championship title defense in the main event of UFC 297. Sean Strickland will put his middleweight championship on the line against Dricus Du Plessis in the main event of UFC 297. So my storylines heading into the big main event taking place next weekend in the UFC. Will either fighter be able to handle their emotions? Emotions are running at an all-time high for this high stakes main event at UFC 297 between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis. These fighters clearly don't like each other. And if you guys remember from watching the UFC 296 pay-per-view, the final UFC pay-per-view of the calendar year 2023, we seen the 5 to 10 second brawl between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis. They actually fought each other in the crowd. And in my opinion, that 5 to 10 second brawl was more exciting than the main event that we saw between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington in the main event of UFC 296. But I digress. But then this is also getting personal because you have Dricus Du Plessis now talking about Sean Strickland's childhood. So things are getting very personal. Will either fighter be able to handle their emotions heading into a big championship fight this Saturday in the UFC? Another storyline. Can Sean Strickland handle the pressure? This is Sean Strickland's first UFC middleweight championship title defense since he pulled off one of, if not the biggest upset in UFC history when he defeated Israel Adesanya last year to become the new middleweight champion in the UFC. He finally gets to defend the middleweight championship. Will he be able to handle the pressure and successfully retain his UFC middleweight championship? And then you have looking at Dricus Du Plessis for his storyline in this fight. He picked up the biggest win of his UFC career last May against Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker is one of the baddest men in the middleweight division in the UFC today. We all know the history that he's had in the middleweight division. Dricus Du Plessis picked up the biggest victory of his UFC career last May when he defeated Robert Whittaker. Can Dricus Du Plessis prove that he is championship material and go in the deep waters with Sean Strickland and potentially become the new middleweight champion in the UFC? Time will tell in the main event at UFC 297. So, this is my tail of the tape for the fight. You have Sean Strickland, who is the reigning defending UFC middleweight champion of the world. He has 28 wins, 5 losses to his resume. He has 11 victories coming away of knockout. He has 4 submission victories. Sean Strickland stands at 6'1" and has a reach advantage of 76 inches. Then you look at the challenger, Dricus Du Plessis. Dricus Du Plessis is the number 2 ranked middleweight fighter in the UFC today. He's currently 20-2 in his career in his MMA career. He has 9 victories coming away of knockout. He has 10 submission victories. He also stands at 6'1" and has a reach advantage of 76 inches. So both fighters have the same height and both fighters have the same reach advantage heading into the main event of UFC 297. So these are the game plans that I have for these fighters to follow if they plan on walking out of the 6. If they plan on walking out of Toronto, Canada with the UFC middleweight championship. These are the following game plans that I have for these fighters if they plan to be successful in the main event of UFC 297. Starting off with the challenger, Dricus Du Plessis. Grappling. I do believe that Dricus Du Plessis has to be on point. He has to be picture perfect when it comes to the grappling department against the champion Sean Strickland. Dricus Du Plessis is a great grappler. He has 10 submission victories in his MMA career thus far. Keep Sean Strickland grounded, and I think it's best for Dricus Du Plessis to shoot for a lot of takedowns in this fight against Sean Strickland. Next game plan. I think Dricus Du Plessis, as long as the fight is standing up, I think it's best for him to walk down the champion Sean Strickland. He was very successful walking down Robert Whittaker And when he picked up the biggest victory of his UFC career last May, he walked down Robert Whittaker, gave him a lot of problems, timed his strikes very well, and really ended up. That's what really ended up leading him to ending the fight with a knockout victory over Robert Whittaker. Great game plan that he had. I think he has to have that same game plan walking down Sean Strickland in this fight and let his hands fly, let his hands go, and the striking department as well. And last game plan, cardio. I hope Dricus Du Plessis has the gas tank to go, and has the gas tank to be ready, and I hope his gas tank is on full to possibly go 5 championship rounds with Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland is a warrior. Sean Strickland does not quit in that octagon. And the only thing that we have not seen out of Dricus Du Plessis and his UFC run thus far is his cardiovascular endurance truly being tested. We have not seen Dricus Du Plessis go into the deep waters yet in his UFC career against a top-tier fighter just yet. So I think he has to have a full tank of gas ready to go 5 rounds if needed with Sean Strickland. Because if you're banking on a knockout, if you're banking on a submission victory against Sean Strickland, that's not the way to do it. If it comes, then so be it. But he's going to have to be willing to go in the deep waters with Sean Strickland, potentially win that UFC middleweight championship by decision. That gas tank is going to be very important for Dricus Du Plessis in this fight. And then for the champion, these are the following game plans I have for Sean Strickland if he wants to walk out of Toronto, Canada with the UFC middleweight title. I think it's very important for Sean Strickland to stay calm, collected, and patient. He was very calm, dissecting Israel Adesanya for a total of 5 championship rounds. It was a complete shutout from round 1 all the way to round 5. That was no doubt his best performance in his UFC career up to date. If he's calm, patient, cool, and collected, and doesn't let his emotions get the best of him, he can have a successful night against Dricus Du Plessis and do what he pleases in that octagon. And speaking of that, he has to control the pace of the fight. I think that's important for Sean Strickland as well. He's a tremendous striker when he takes control of the fight, when he controls the pace of the fight. I think that's going to be very important for Sean Strickland to do against Dricus Du Plessis in this fight. And last but not least, takedown defense. I just talked about Dricus Du Plessis being a great grappler and getting 50% of his wins by submission. Sean Strickland is somebody that is great against takedown fighters shooting for takedowns. Sean Strickland's takedown defense is a 84%. He defends the takedown very well. I do not believe that. I do believe that Sean Strickland will not allow Dricus Du Plessis to land a lot of takedowns in this fight, which could be for the best. And those are my game plans for both fighters to walk if they plan on walking out the middleweight champion. Man, this is really tough. This is really tough, but. With that being said, I'm going with Sean Strickland to successfully retain his UFC middleweight championship against Dricus Du Plessis. I do believe this will be one hell of a fight. I do believe it's going to be a seesaw battle. It could go back and forth between the two respective fighters, but I do believe Sean Strickland will be the man with this hand raised and walking out still middleweight champion out of Toronto, Canada. I think Sean Strickland, to me, is the overall better fighter than DDP. I do believe that Sean Strickland will control the pace of this fight. And I do believe that his striking ability will be too much for DDP to handle in this fight. His unpredictable style is just going to be too much for DDP to handle throughout this fight. I do believe that Sean Strickland's great takedown defense is also going to, has me leaning towards him in this fight against DDP. Because if you can make sure that the fight is kept standing up, you have to say it's in favor of Sean Strickland. For DDP, who is a great grappler and has 50% of his wins coming way of submission, has 10 submission victories out of his 20 MMA victories. So, and the thing that we have not seen from DDP in his UFC run is going into the deep waters, and we have not seen his cardiovascular endurance truly tested against an elite fighter. That is the only thing that DDP has yet to prove in his UFC run thus far. And if you're not willing to go in the deep waters with a guy like Sean Strickland that has an unpredictable style, you don't know what he's going to throw at you. He could throw the whole damn kitchen sink at you. If you're not willing to swim in there for 5 championship rounds with Sean Strickland, It's not going to be a good night in the office for you. And I am leaning towards Sean Strickland to retain his UFC middleweight championship. But that is my fight prediction for this weekend's fight between Sean Strickland and Dricus Du Plessis.